All right, I'm back, and I thought about how I wanted to illustrate the points that need to be followed here. And so I'm going to use my dining room table as an example of the bottom of the tank. So if we were looking at the tank and we could see through this white section, and this line here, it's pretend is the bottom of the tank, right? The bottom of the tank right here is this line. This is going to be installed to the bottom of the tank. This will be the water supply line on the outside that we previously disconnected. That'll be being reconnected. And then this is the flush valve. Again, flush with the bottom of the tank. This is the part that sticks out the bottom of the tank in the previous section we just removed. And so the critical points here is it's one of the things is called the critical line after reading the directions. The critical line is made by this mark right here. And it's important that the critical line is below, this line in your tank is below, let's pretend this is where you grab the flush handle and you flush the toilet. This has to be above, the flush handle needs to be higher than the critical line, or the critical line, I should say, should be lower. And the reason that is important is if you exceeded the critical line, but your opening for your flush handle was below, then water would pour out of the toilet tank onto your floor. So we want this higher, and then it corresponds also to another level over here on the flush valve. So this is the emergency or overflow fill tube. When the water goes higher than this, because maybe you have a stuck valve, something broke over here, eventually it's going to spill over and go down this tube and into your toilet without you ever having to flush, and that keeps you from having a flood. So obviously with the hole for the actuator that we all use to flush the toilet, that's got to be higher. The critical line needs to be higher than the emergency line. So I'm going to end up, when I install this, I'll end up raising this tube one click up so that it's a little bit closer but still below the critical line. The critical line is right here. And that way I never have to worry about having a flooded bathroom, because this doesn't require a valve. Once the water pours over this siphon entrance, it just goes down and comes out right there, and it's already going down your tank. And that's why I have high water bills, because this other one was leaking at the base, as I showed you in the early part of this video tutorial. This is a solid piece of plastic. It cannot leak. This is not pressed. It has a mold line here, but it's not pressed. It's one solid piece. So that's how we solve our problem, and this is the proper alignment. So the key takeaways again are: your critical line needs to be below your flush handle outlet, so you don't, if you have a runaway valve, you're not going to get water coming out of there. And the second part of that is you shouldn't have that happen anyway, because as the water goes above this fill line here, it starts pouring into this exit tube and harmlessly goes into your waste pipe. We want to stop the water from flowing to save us all money, but again, that's the critical points. The directions in these two pieces of instruction are very clear. Just read them several times, but that's the takeaways that you need to plan for. This is really not hard. Once you've done one, you can do the rest of them so much quicker. The other key point is, let's pretend that this is the back of the tank. This part is the back of the tank. This, again, is the bottom of the tank. You want the orientation of this valve to be just like I have it here, because if you'll notice, this is not center circular. This is going to sit against the wall of your tank, and you don't want this to touch the wall, because then that will bind its movement. So if you had it rotated this way, then this thing would be hitting the back of the tank, this part. So you want to have it sitting just like I had it laying, with the thinnest portion against the back of the tank. That way when you tighten this valve, when you tighten up the nut that goes on the outside to seal it, it stands this thing straight up vertically, and it's off the wall. So it's going to be basically in that configuration. You do not want the adjustment to be that way. You don't want it to be this way. You want it to be basically pointing right like that. And then this one is going to be in the same orientation as you see it here. You don't want it here. You don't want it here. Then you won't be able to get to the bolts. And that's self-explanatory. If you put it in the wrong position, you won't be able to put that brass bolt through the bottom of the tank, so you'll have to rotate this. But we'll cover that as we install it back.